kind of memories as a student when you were at school? Do you have any memories of a particular school trip?
Yeah, in fact, I've got two or three,
Mm.
and it was funny because when I first discussed breach, breach sort of the discussion with my friend
Mm.
originally, straight away I had great fond memories
Yeah.
of school trips that I went on, and I'm a bit of a history buff, so two of my favourite school trips I went on. Were fairly local to me, because, as you can tell from my accent, I'm a Midlander,
Yeah.
from Birmingham, and I had I remember going with my school. We went to the Black Country Museum,
Mm.
which was
Yes.
fantastic, and it was also seeing the the actual working environments internally and externally of how my grandparents would have
Yeah.
been born and lived, and experienced,
Mm.
and just thinking, wow, I'm glad that wasn't me.
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
it's fascinating how you see that 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 time period change. So when you look today, we've got washing machines, we've got fridge freezers. Well, back when you look at sort of the environment of the how the Black Country is, and it's great because over the years they've made it so much more interactive.
Yeah.
But you can see the the, the very small back-to-back houses that they lived in. The poor sanitary conditions. Families. Three or four families, sort of living in a two-bedroom small, property. Um, so that whole sort of experience, sticks in your mind,
Yeah.
especially when, as mentioned before, we've moved on, and we've progressed so much more
Mm.
since those periods of time. And then also, my grandfather, he was, well, both my grandparents obviously experienced the wars. So
Yeah.
another fantastic trip that I experienced was going to Bletchley Park and
Yeah.
experiencing, the exhibitions and the interactive tour that they did regarding the sort of the World War II code breakers and all the history that surrounded that, and really how important of a breakthrough that happened there, in relation to be able to decipher, um, obviously the communications, of the opposing enemy. And yeah, that just really stuck in my mind.
It's
And,
just,
and, and just
yeah. It's sorry to
That's okay.
cut you off there, but it is amazing how those trips were probably back in your childhood, years and years and
Sure.
years ago, but you're still holding on to that now, and I think that comes back to exactly what we were saying there, isn't it? That the benefits of school trips are that can be so deep and can be so powerful. And I was just listening on the news earlier there about Boris Johnson mentioned that they want to be building, or they've started a committee to develop a COVID memorial, and they want it to be, I don't know where it's going to be yet, but a place where
Sure.
people can come. And it got me thinking, will people be doing trips in London in decades to come, thinking back about people who lived through COVID and so on? It's quite scary
Yeah.
to think of that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. You could definitely imagine in the future that schools from outside the area, because obviously London is like many areas, depending on what type of trip you go on. But it's a massive sort of pull in relation to varying trips within London.
Yeah. A big hello to everyone who's joining us live. We are now actually streaming. We're not just live here on Podbean. So if you are listening, hello to all of our listeners on Twitter. We are broadcasting live on Twitter too at the moment. So big hello if you are listening there. We're also broadcasting live on Facebook as well. So we're actually broadcasting live, Craig, to a number of platforms here. So big hello to all our listeners. If you are listening live on Podbean at the moment, do feel free to get involved in the chat if you have a story from a trip that you remember being on. If you've got a particular memorable moment on a trip that you want to share with us, I've got a few that have been shared on social media since we went live. I'll discuss some of them as well later. But if you are live on Podbean, you can indeed get involved in the chat or call in and chat to me and Craig. Certainly, even on those two trips that you mentioned there, sure. Craig, I can think of experiences, not all positive actually, and I can remember a colleague telling me about a Black Country museum trip, not in the school that I'm currently in, but students who realised they were going on a day out and maybe took it a bit far, and they were sick at the back of the bus very early on in the trip because they had consumed maybe a beverage that they shouldn't have been consuming when they are 14, and especially when you're going on, quite a sobering trip like the Black Country Museum. Not the type of trip that not that you should be doing that on any trips, but certainly there are a number, and I'll talk later about a number of bad experiences that people have had on trips, including our very own Kyle Graham, who is the host of the Twilight Show on a Tuesday, who shared a story with us on social media where Kyle said that he was the member of staff who was at the service stations making sure all of the students were leaving the toilets. So he was back there making sure that they all left, only to find out the bus left while he was still waiting outside the toilets. All the students had left and he was hovering about in the toilets, and apparently his colleagues don't let him live it down. That for some reason they managed to leave the service stations without the teacher on the bus.
It's funny you mentioned that. I've heard similar stories to that.
It's amazing how many times that the people who are in charge of making sure they don't lose any students end up losing one of their own, isn't it? But
it's I think I think it's personally for me it would be an exciting thing to do, but also that there is a lot of responsibility there.
Well, that's precisely what I was going to say. My next question was going to be, what do you think is the barriers to school trips happening? And you've almost said it there. Do you think that staff are maybe worried, scared, afraid to run trips?
There might be a percentage out there who might think that. I think what we try to do, and there's other organisations out there, Department for Education, their guidance, and the LOTC, Learning Outside the Classroom, the OEAP. There's, I think, especially now and over the past sort of 10 years, especially, they're always looking at policies and ways to improve and improve processes, especially safety processes and everything else, to make sure that anyone who's sort of got apprehension, especially the teachers, because you definitely have got responsibility for the group. Whether it's a residential a residential trip, or whether it's just it could be a reward trip to a theme park. There's the responsibility there of transporting pupils from school, via transport to that location. Making sure that also at that location, like you mentioned earlier, they don't wander off. So there is responsibility there, but I definitely think it's worth it. I think also slightly as well, and I know it's it's debatable, but pupils as well, that they need to take a percentage of responsibility so that when they are on a day out, they don't go too crazy.
Mm. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I think lots of venues and organisations involved, are always looking at ways of improving processes, and making sure that the trips, are well organised, safety is involved, and to make sure that teachers who go out on a trip feel confident,
Mm.
and also at the locations as well. That depending on, as a for instance, residential centre or stopping even in accommodation, that there's safe, secure accommodation there.
Mm.
Um,
It's amazing. Schools offer an unbelievable amount of training for various different issues.
sure.
But staff training for trips, is that something that you've heard of much?
Oh, sorry, Dave. Can you just repeat that?
Yeah, staff training for trips. Do staff get trained much in many schools for how to lead trips or that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there is training out there
Mm.
in relation to what's known as an educational visits coordinator,
Yes.
which we obviously personally we don't do ourselves. That's more through the school and other organisations who provide training courses for a specific teacher. That could be a head teacher.
Yeah.
It could be head of head of the school.
Yeah.
So yeah, it tends to be, it tends to be specified teachers within a school who get training in that area, because obviously you have things like risk assessments, as part of planning a school trip.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's various procedures that you have to go through. So yeah, there are organisations out there that do provide training.
Yeah. If you are listening live at the moment, do feel free to get involved in the chat. If you're listening to us on Podbean, do please feel free to type in the chat or call in any point if you want to discuss trips with myself and Craig. If you are listening on Facebook, if you are listening on Twitter, do feel free to get involved in the chat, and we will also give you a shout out live, or indeed you could, if you make a contribution to the show, you could indeed win one of our very, very amazing Teachers Talk Radio mugs. I'm going to talk with Craig next a little bit more about the important, or not important, the exciting trips that you can go on in the UK, because we've talked about the procedural stuff so far a little, but let's talk about the exciting stuff. Where can you actually go? And I also want to raise an important question, which is, can everybody afford trips, and how can we make trips affordable? This is Teachers Talk Radio. It's the Wednesday drive home. You're listening to David Cunningham live. I have something that's come in via the social media, which says, I have vivid memories of spending a whole day in my lower six counting blades of grass on the windiest, coldest day on a remote beach in the middle of nowhere. There were a few perks, though, including one of the lads managing to fall into a ditch on the way to the beach and going paddling in the sea. Brackets, if wading around ankle deep in walking boots with trousers rolled up to the knee in icy cold water in the middle of November counts as paddling. One of our teachers, it's very funny, this person. One of our teachers thought that grass was so exciting, and why couldn't we see the appeal? Whilst the other one was sat in the sand dunes all day, looking thoroughly bored, munching away on his sandwiches. On the way back in the minibus, I happened to make a comment, very sarcastically, that I never knew grass could be so exciting, when my teacher overheard me and thought that I was serious, so offered to take us away for the weekend again to do a similar field trip in a few months. Surprisingly, there were few takers. That I think,
it sounds like that pupil or students at that point love nature.
Yes, that's certainly a curriculum-based trip, isn't it? We always talk about different types of trip. That sounds like if they're counting grass, biology, potentially geography. But surely curriculum trips can be made to avoid those stereotypes there, because I think that student was buying into, or ex-student, I think obviously now an adult, but is buying into a number of the, it's just, cold, wet, counting something boring. How can you, not you personally, but how can you as a trip leader try and get a curriculum trip that doesn't fall into a number of those pitfalls there that we read out?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think over the past definitely 10 years, and especially doing what we've been doing and contacting venues and especially as an example, environment centres who would do biology field trips. I think over the years they've improved processes. So when you go on a field trip now, when an educational visit coordinator is researching and planning, there's lots of options out there for environmental centres and residential centres that provide not just outdoor activities but environmental field trips. Interlinked with biology, science, STEM. That they are making them more interesting, more interactive, more creative, making it more of a not just not just transferring just information from a book, but making it that more interactive, so that they're learning that they're learning something in a creative, interactive way that stimulates them mentally.
I like doing. I used to take a trip to the French Alps, which was a great privilege to be at a school where we were able to do this trip for geography fieldwork. In the kind of the end of June, the weather was always pretty nice, and sometimes it's about going beyond just the field work. And I think you were kind of starting to hint at that there, that there are centres now who realise maybe you do some sort of group bonding tasks in the evening, or have a little room that converts into an outdoor cinema in the evening, or because I think traditionally, you would just do your boring data collection, go into a smelly room, and then just look at it for the rest of the night. But I've found something that's brilliant is we work them really hard in the day, doing data collection and into the early evening. But I've always found, and I just stumbled across this is about a decade, maybe slightly less, where this game called Werewolves. I don't know if you've ever heard about this game, but effectively they just sit in a big circle, and it's really good kind of group bonding because they all get assigned a role within this circle, which is the village, and some of them are villagers, some of them are got special powers, some of them are the little girl of the village, but there's always a number of werewolves, and I won't go into it in too much depth, but effectively they're trying to work out by, there's points where you've got to close your eyes and things happen, and you effectively have to call each other out to find out who's lying. You're trying to find out who the werewolves in the group are, and the group, it sounds like such a boring, rubbish game, but the number of times with groups that they bond over this, and there's always running jokes about how people were able to keep a straight face and so on and so on. And I think there's a lot to be said about making sure that you have a plethora of kind of team bonding, and not in a cheesy team bonding way, but games that will interest them and things that will interest the students. And food, another absolutely massive one that I'm sure you were kind of hinting at there as well, that a number of these centres have improved their offerings quite a bit. But I also remember going to a centre in the UK. I won't name the centre or the organisation, but where you would go in the evening and you'd pick up your tray. And again, this is slightly negative, but the students, and again, this is going back a decade, but the students would effectively call it prison food, which is slightly insulting coming from the students. But they didn't like the fact that they weren't even told the type of soup or the ingredients of the soup, because this particular place just called your starter, which was your soup, they would just call it green soup, brown soup, yellow soup, and just slop the bowl of the coloured soup. It basically was just different colours of the, and it just felt like they were just going through the motions on other groups, and let's serve them some green soup or yellow soup. And
bit of surprise soup.
Exactly. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah.
Which is green, which is green, but it's just a surprise.
Exactly. But it's, I think a lot of those centres have now significantly improved, and I think there is competition with a lot of those outdoor centres now, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. There's a multitude of outdoor residential centres, activity centres, environmental centres, and yeah, I think whether it was a school trip or a youth group, or even a Cub Scouts or Girl Guides group, in order to attract those groups, those educational groups, facilities wise, that they've improved over time. Venues have when we've contacted them, they've always mentioned, in regards to how do you think we could sort of improve our facilities? Do you think we've got enough facilities? And we've always sort of said, it'd be good to do, questionnaires from teachers about their experiences, about the trip to their venue, and see ways to improve. But yeah, the majority of the venues or residential centres that we've come across have vastly improved, over time. All their sort of processes. I think it's like anything, whether you're attracting an educational group or it could be families. The greater facilities that you have there that you can offer, or even, it's not to do so much with having loads and loads of facilities. If you've got a select amount of facilities there, it's making sure that you offer those facilities in a really well, sorry, in a not an important way, but
you kind of emphasize that
offering those facilities.
Let's move on to
Sure.
a quite exciting bit of content, which is, what would you say is the best places in the UK, in your opinion, for trips? So out of all the exciting places, whether it be just a day trip or a residential, what would you say are the kind of the top, either destinations or particular workshops, or is there things that really stand out that you think, wow, this is good?
Yeah, I think that is
it's a very tough
very
question.
hard question.
Yeah,
it is, indeed, because there's so many different sort of venues that offer different experiences. So, and especially, as I mentioned before, you could go to traditionally what would have just offered maybe a tour around and some exhibition material on the wall, but now it's so much more interactive. So you've got trips to wow, yeah, you've got the Jorvik Viking Centre. So as an
Okay.
example, you've got a very interactive walkthrough environment
Okay.
where you learn about how the Vikings came over,
Yeah.
how they settled, the whole sort of history from start to beginning. But then also what they've designed and provided now is what's known as Jorvik Dig. So you can take your, for instance, your primary
Mm.
pupils or students into an area where they dig for artifacts. So
Okay.
yeah, which is something
It's quite
completely
good.
new.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's other centres out there that are creating so many more interactive experiences. So where you might think, oh, you traditionally got that from let's say a theme park,
Yeah.
they're becoming more entwined now within museums
Mm. Mm.
to create a more, as I mentioned before, a more interactive experience.
Yeah.
Then you've got outdoor pursuits. So you've got one of my favourites because I'm totally scared of heights. You've got
Me too.
in in Wales, as an example, that you've got one of the biggest zip lines in
Hmm.
the UK, where you can lie in a pod,
Yeah.
and you go from great height, and you zip over, you zip through and along different sort of environments.
Yeah.
So yeah, and treetop as well. So there's so many different things. It's actually hard to you've got me there.
Narrow it down. Yeah.
Funny,
Well, let
but
me
yeah,
let me
funny enough.
take let me take a list from, and we can do this as a little bit of a game then. Let me
Sure.
take a list from English Heritage. Okay, they've
Okay.
created a list of what they think are their top 3 places to go in the UK for school trips. And what we'll
Sure.
do is I will go from I'll start off with number 3 down to 2 and then 1, and after I say each one, you can tell me whether you think yes or no. As
Yeah.
in, do you think it's a good place to do a school trip? So, according to English Heritage, the third best place to go on a trip is, drum roll, Dover Castle, Kent. And I know you like
Okay.
your history trips. They've said Dover Castle, Kent supports students learning in a fun and engaging way. Visit Dover Castle, which has played an important part in history for 2,000 years. Discover the Roman lighthouse, the oldest in the country. Then see the Great Tower and learn about the Palace of Henry II. You can book an
Sure.
educational tour. Dress up. This is what you said. Interactive is great. Dress up as a medieval lady or knight. I know that Tom Rogers is in the chat. I'm sure he would love to go to the Grand Tower and dress up as a medieval lady or knight. I'm sure he would love that. In fact, we've got a lot of history teachers at Teachers Talk Radio, so you can imagine Tom Hopkins Burke as the medieval knight. You could have Tom Rogers next to him. Absolutely. Very good.
I don't think
Yeah.
I'd want to dress as one of the ladies of King Henry VIII, considering what happened. Considering what happened to most of them.
That's true. That's true. That doesn't tend to end well, does it?
No, absolutely.
At Dover Castle in Kent, you can then finish up at the secret wartime tunnels, where you can learn about World War I, the role of the fire command post, and how Operation Dynamo, the Dunkirk evacuation of May 1940, was masterminded. Do you think that sounds like a good trip?
Definitely, especially I am an avid World War I and World War II fan as well, from a historical point of view. So, yeah,
Sounds
that definitely
good.
gets a tick. Yeah.
Yep. Okay,
thumbs up from me.
Thumbs up for Dover Castle, Kent. Right, let's go to English Heritage and their number 2 school trip in the UK. Here we go. Drum roll. Fanfare. if you are listening on Twitter, or if you are indeed on Facebook, please do feel free to get in touch. Use the chat function. Let us know that you're out there. Tell us what your favourite UK trip is, or indeed your worst or best trip memory. Number 2 is Battle Abbey, East Sussex. What better way to learn about 1066 and the Battle of Hastings than by walking in the footsteps of William the Conqueror and King Harold at Battle Abbey? Discover the story of 1066 by standing on the spot where the battle took place and learn all about the events leading up to one of the most famous dates in history. The Abbey remains allow you to delve further into monastic life and the impact that William's victory had on Britain. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Sounds good, doesn't it? Let's give that a little tick as well. We've got before we go to number 1, we've got I don't know your name because the Podbean does this lovely thing of sometimes giving people bizarre names. But we've got a comment on the chat where this person, please do feel free to let us know your name if you wish. Teachers may be hesitant about organising trips, choosing a venue that holds the LOTC quality badge, reduces the red tape and means that teachers can be confident about risk management, brackets, including COVID infection control and quality of learning offered. What do you think about that, Craig?
Yeah, I think that helps any venue being part of that process, because originally the LOTC was actually set up. I'm sure I'm going to get this right now, but originally it was designed and organised through the Department for Education when Labour were in number 10, and you had Ed Balls, the current sort of education secretary at the time, and it was very much it was great because at that point they were looking at ways of as I mentioned previously, looking at processes to enhance and create safety procedures for trips. So the LOTC came about from that. So it was created as a charitable organisation, and they do a brilliant job because it's all about promoting safety awareness at venues, and also how they can create
help,
create those processes into their venue, so that like any quality badge, if you've got that, it does help.
See, there was a different host. He wasn't talking about this. It was Kyle Graham. Was it Kyle Graham or Graham Collum? I can't remember the show now, but one of our other hosts was discussing in fact, it was definitely Graham Collum who discussed all the different roles that teachers have to do that maybe you weren't trained for. And, there's a hint in that comment there about risk management. And, risk management, that's such a massive area, and it's potentially career ending if it's wrong, isn't it? If teachers do lead a group into a bad position or bad place, if they're found to be at risk and they're the person that's signed that risk assessment, or they've not followed the risk assessment, is there, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is are teachers actually qualified to be making risk assessments for places that, quite frankly, many teachers will go on a trip where they've never been to the place before?
Sure. Well, you can. One thing that venues offer is before they take any school to that venue, that they can do pre-risk assessments. So that they gain confidence before taking any group, especially if they think, I'm not going to go down the traditional route of the year above and then the year above that, I've done the traditional trip that we've always done at school. When I mentioned previously, these venues now have created and streamlined these processes to make sure that for teachers that they can go and do pre-risk assessments, they can have a walk around, they can then but plan their actual trip with them. So the education officers at many of the venues are there. They're former teachers as well. There's a percentage that are former teachers, so they understand the processes that the teachers have to go through. So it's all about streamlining these processes, obviously offering pre-risk assessments, and just providing confidence that when they do bring their school trip to that venue, that safety's always there in the background.
Yeah, I've got another comment coming in at the moment, Craig, that says, again, in the chat. So thank you. If you are listening at the moment, do feel free to get involved in the chat. Please do leave a message. If you want to let us know that you're listening, you can call in at any point. There's some excellent things coming through in the chat now, and I'll read out a few of them. The Council for Learning Outside the Classroom is running a masterclass in Zoom, taking teachers through how to plan and organise off-site trips and residentials. That's coming up on the 8th of June. I'll read it out again if you're listening back as a podcast. That's the Council for Learning Outside the Classroom. Maybe if you Google that, the Council for Learning Outside the Classroom is running a masterclass on Zoom, taking teachers through how to plan and organise off-site trips and residentials. It's coming up on the 8th of June. So thank you for that comment in the chat. There's also another comment coming through saying every region has an outdoor education advisor who can give help, support and advice on planning trips. We've got some other comments coming through as well. Thank you for that. And thank you to everyone who's listening at the moment. Do feel free to get involved, call in, or indeed use the chat function at any point. Stay connected. Hello to, is it Mimie Miles who just joined us? We've got Lou Wilson. A big hello to Dallas, Klinger, Mitch. Lots of Mike has entered the studio too. Big hello to everyone who's joining us. Do feel free to get involved in the chat. Call in at any point. I've got another comment coming through, Craig, and it's coming through one of our other social streams at the moment, which says, I think students, this is from John, I think students should visit their local prison, maybe deter a future visit. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, it's funny that was mentioned because not promoting just my website, but
go for it.
Yeah, we do have a number of trips on our website that provide trips to their former prisons. So from a safety point of view, that would be quite an interesting question whether a teacher would like to take pupils to a live prison.
Yeah, that's true.
But you have got Shepton Mallet Prison and Shrewsbury Prison, Clink Prison Museum in London as well. But purely sort of Shrewsbury Prison and Shepton Mallet Prison, that they do interactive tours, educational tours, through sort of well, actually, one of them is related to an actual Victorian prison, but then the latter one that provides experiences of how prisons are run, and sort of the ins and outs of how I suppose a day in prison life would happen. Really, there's sort of I understand that the tours are led by also ex-prison officers.
That's brilliant.
So,
that's brilliant.
So
really
they've
good.
got the experience to be able to obviously teach the ins and outs and the ups and downs of prison life, I suppose.
So if people were interested in finding out more about that, they could go to your website, ukschooltrips.co.uk, and could they search prisons in the search function?
They can, yeah. If they just type in
Brilliant.
prison,
Yep.
the two that I've just mentioned will pop up.
Yep.
And they've got all of the information in relation to what they do listed on there.
Yeah.
From an educational point of view.
Brilliant.
Which is fantastic. And also, you know, what typically sort of happens throughout that trip. So yeah, it's just literally hit the website, have a look at the information, and also contact the venue directly for sort of latest prices and availability as well.
Fantastic. What we've got is we've still to do the number one location for a school trip according to English Heritage. We've only done 3 in number 2. Before we get to number 1, we're very late for the news. So look at that for a cliffhanger. It's almost like one of your favorite soaps, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We'll be back very soon. Are you happy to join us after the news, Craig? Again,
I think so. As long as I get a mug.
We will absolutely need to get the Teachers Talk Radio crew to get that mug out to you. We will find out the number 1 location according to English Heritage to go on a school trip very, very soon on the other side of the news.
Live from London, this is The Drive Home with Dave Cunningham on Teachers Talk Radio.
Wow, it's been a great first hour of the show. We've been discussing school trips. We're looking at the top school trips. I want to talk about the top places to go in Europe as well on a school trip very soon. Lots to come in the last half hour. Stay tuned. This is Teachers Talk Radio. I'm Dave Cunningham. We are officially live until 5:30. Stay tuned. Keep in touch.
Live from London. This is The Drive Home with Dave Cunningham on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live on the Podbean app or desktop player. Just head over to www.podbean.com/LSW/TT Radio or search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TT Radio. This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Megan Goods.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News. The union, GMB, has conducted a survey on the nation's attitudes to teaching assistants. 74% of those questioned felt that the average teaching assistant's earnings, around £13,856 in 2020, were too low, whilst 3/4 argued that support staff should be more valued by society. A spokesperson for the union called teaching assistants the glue that keeps children's education together, and stated, "These results show that they are rightly valued by the public, and now it's time for the government and employers to catch up." Lord Michael Storey, a Liberal Democrat peer, is pushing for a bill which could see essay writing services banned in Britain amid fears students are cheating their way into jobs. The bill would make it illegal to provide or advertise the service. Lord Storey feels the free availability of contracted essay writing may bring academic credibility into question. Data from the Quality Assurance Agency for Higher Education shows essay mill services are on the rise in Britain, from 635 in June 2018 to at least 932 sites as of February 2021, indicating an increase in demand as school and university students worked from home. Schools in Scotland have received a warning from the Scottish Qualifications Authority after students were found sharing details of ongoing assessments on TikTok. The SQA suggested schools prioritise maintaining the security and confidentiality required for the integrity of the assessments and to ensure fairness for students. It called for schools to investigate malpractice and apply appropriate penalties. That was your daily education news briefing.
It's time for the Teachers Talk Radio moment of the week. Oh, I can feel the nerves, the anxiety, all the Teachers Talk Radio hosts.
Do we get a drum roll?
We do get a drum roll too. We do get a drum roll. This is a very, very exciting moment. What happened over the last 7 days? Well, if you were listening last Friday, you would have heard Kate Jones with the unbelievable Mary Myatt, who told us about her book title, which is a slight swear word. It is a not very good book title, apparently. Mira's Wellbeing Weekend, which was another fantastic show where we woke up to the quiet meditation vibes. Check out Mira's show from last Saturday. And then we had, again, it was another weekend show, lots of weekend shows in the running for the top Teachers Talk Radio moment of the week. And there was Tom's final news hour show. It's now just going to be called his lunch show, but his final news hour show, he had Tom's News Muse Views poem, where Tom read out a fantastic poem. I think we do need exactly what Craig said. We need a drum roll. The Teachers Talk Radio moment of the week.
I thought I'd write a short poem.
Oh, it's Tom Hopkins Burke. Yes, let's hear it.
Say out loud, live on the show. I don't want to big myself up too much, but it rhymes. And
wow, a rhyming poem from Tom Hopkins Burke.
Views on the News, or This Is How Desperate I Am to Win Dave Cunningham's Moment of the Week. And here it goes. We can't do news without your views. So if you have views about the news, don't just peruse. You can choose to use your views on the news. Don't refuse or excuse your views. Don't lose your chance to muse when it comes to what construes your views on the news. Use your views without a snooze and choose to use your views on the news by tuning in and talking it out live on Teachers Talk Radio.
Wow, what a poem, and well done to Tom Hopkins Burke.
Live from London.
Excellent.
This is The Drive Home.
A natural William Shakespeare in the making.
Teachers Talk Radio.
Oh, I mean, hold on. Tom Hopkins Burke, the future, the future William Shakespeare. I think if Tom is listening back to this, he'll be very, very, very pleased with that. Tom Hopkins Burke, aka the future William Shakespeare. That's the perfect sound effect. Okay, Craig, we're back and we are indeed live. Let's do another drum roll because I promised everybody we would do the #1, according to English Heritage, UK venue or place for a school trip. Drum roll. It is Stonehenge. Stonehenge in Wiltshire. Are you currently teaching Key Stage 2 students about Neolithic hunter-gatherers in the Bronze Age? It would be hard to find a better site to help you cover the topic than the world-famous Stonehenge, the most exciting prehistoric monument in the British Isles. Useful link to geography, maths and science, by discussing how our ancestors might have moved and raised the stones, literacy, speaking, listening skills, examining myths and legends linked to the site, and asking your class to come up with their own theories about how the monument was used. What's your view on Stonehenge as a school trip then?
Well, as I mentioned previously, I'm anything to do with history. So yeah, all three of those I'd go on, definitely.
Yeah, one of the things that we were about to discuss just before we had that little break for the news and so on was cost. Sure. For me, it's a massive issue. Marcus Rashford, the Manchester United football player, was really big, over the last year, fighting for kind of access to free school meals for students.
Yeah.
Do you think we need a similar movement with school trips and helping students access outdoor education and school trips?
I think there's a number of policies. No, I think there's a number of you've got a number of venues. I think a lot of venues that might charge a family rate. This is
Yeah.
another thing that venues up and down the country have had to sit down and look at, because as a family, specifically, when you go on, say, a family trip compared to an educational trip, there's a difference in relation to cost. So venues up and down the country have sat down and reviewed their pricing. And ourselves, whenever we contact venues or discuss with sort of our existing venues who are with us, price point is important. It's one of the most important factors. So, that they constantly would review and look at that. Obviously, you've got different schools in different locations of the country. Some might be slightly maybe more prosperous than others.
Yeah.
So there are a selection of free school visits available as well.
Yeah, I've noticed we've got that in the chat. Someone's commented, many venues offer free access for school groups. Biggest cost on school trips is transport. I would agree, and I would also not agree with that. Transport, certainly in the trips that I've been involved in, particularly for the international, if you're doing a European style trip,
Sure.
Absolutely, transport is huge. But I find a real barrier to even going to a farm. There's a farm local to where I'm based at the moment, and they're charging £11-12 per head for a student. And yes, they do a full day with them, but when you divide it up, when you're taking 2 coach loads worth of students and you're dividing that cost, actually, the £11-12 for that particular very local farm trip, the cost of the visit is actually more than the transport. But I know it will definitely, thanks for the comment in the chat, it will definitely depend on the trip and where you're actually going. And I know that's only one example. I've got a list here of some excellent free experiences offered around the UK. Apparently, Pizza Express runs school visits. They've done that since 1999. I hadn't actually heard of that, but apparently, obviously, COVID, things will be different at the moment with COVID. But so definitely any advice we're giving on this show/podcast, if you're listening back later, do double check with the providers. But Pizza Express, certainly before COVID, available to book via their website, free visits to their kitchen, learn about food hygiene, find out about fresh ingredients, knead their own dough. The RSPB, have teamed up with Aldi and offer trained educators to come to your school grounds, and you can learn about birds and wildlife in your school grounds. That sounds really good, doesn't it?
Sounds fantastic.
Warburton's, the famous bread making people, they also offer free trips. Their sessions are practical and informative. And 99% of teachers say that they would book a second visit, and that is also 100% free. Apparently, they've been running this for 20 years and reached almost 30,000 children. So well done to Warburton's, who have not paid for the sponsorship. But as they're running free school trips, that sounds awesome. The Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, WWT, they offer free admission and optional learning sessions. So I hope if you are a teacher listening to this at the moment, hopefully just even a little list like that gives you some ideas about the organisations that are running free trips. The RNLI, the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, also runs free trips. Do get in touch with them on the RNLI website. They've got a section called Youth Education. Apparently, you can also get in touch with your local fire stations. I don't know if you know much about that, Craig, but apparently local fire stations can also offer free trips. Is that quite a fair selection of free school trips there?
Yeah, I think there's a good percentage of trips out there that provide free entry, but there's also a number. A large majority of venues, as I've mentioned before, they they do sit down, review their price points, because that is something, as I mentioned before, that's one of the key factors in relation to being able to market from, I suppose, a venue's point of view, being able to market and attract educational visits,
Yeah.
you know, for the right price. So yeah, I think there's lots of venues out there that are proactive, that they understand that it has to be priced in the right way, you know, for the differing experiences. So yeah, I think there's a good understanding out there that does happen. Yeah, I mean, if the government, be good if the government pays for school trips, that'd be a good idea. I think even if the government provided certain supporting revenue streams to help, with even a percentage to help pay for school trips, that would be good.
When I was doing some research, sorry, Craig.
Whether Boris and the Conservatives would like to open the purse strings for that, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, well, again, I was doing some research for the show, trying to find out, you know, what help is there out there, because I was looking to see if there's been much research around the area of inequality and access to school trips in deprived areas, and there's a number of reports out there. But on the whole, pupils are asked to contribute towards the cost of school trips. In a survey by School Zone Educational Intelligence, their findings suggest that only 6% of respondents said that pupils are not asked to contribute. And this was a group of 51 schools, not that representative, I don't think. But they then looked at other regions, and they found that in the Southwest, whereby all schools ask pupils to contribute towards the cost of school trips, although there might be a discrepancy in their data. It's very hard for us to understand the full picture here. In terms of school trips themselves, apparently, the survey also says that 98% of schools have offered an external trip. This is just prior to COVID. This is so in the year prior to COVID. So schools are running trips, but I'm always worried: is there an element that aren't able to actually get on these trips? Students, I mean.
Yeah,
because of money.
I think schools, although, you know, I don't run a school, or I'm not a head teacher, a headmaster of a school, but I think by varying school trips, say throughout the year. So if you decided to go on some school trips, maybe you can do a school trip that's maybe in walking distance, or you might want to do a field trip located nearby in fields, if you know, depending on your location. But sort of reviewing and looking at varying trips, and trying to do sort of a different multitude of varying trips. So from a cost point of view, it becomes cost effective. You know, whether one of those is a free school trip and another one isn't. But yeah, it's an interesting, I suppose, subject or thing to look at in relation to schools and how they book, decide, and you know, sort of plan.
Where they want to go.
Multiple trips.
Got more coming through on our social media streams. We asked at the start of the show, do you have a favourite moment or a bad moment from a school trip? And here's another one coming through. In our school, this is from James 4039D95C6. In our school, there were 4 classes in each year. 3 of the classes were lucky enough to be taken to an amusement park close to London. My class teacher didn't agree with us having a fun day out and said we should be doing something educational on a trip. So where did we go? a washing machine factory in Kent. We were so embarrassed when returning to school that we lied about what we did and told them that the washing machine factory was awesome, and we went on quad bikes. We didn't. We looked inside about 100 old washing machines. Thank you for that, James. Certainly, the experience of students in terms of the trips that they get to go on.
Did James become a washing machine repair specialist?
Do you know exactly? It may well have changed his direction in life, exactly, because we all know that trips have a power beyond, don't we? And I think it's worth just going over again. And we mentioned this at the outset, but what do school trips do? They enrich the curriculum. They create confident individuals. They help people become successful learners. They make you responsible citizens too, don't they? School trips can be powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, school trips definitely are, because pupils and students, especially as well when they think, oh, what do I want to do as a career?
Yeah.
Well, by going on a school trip, so as an example, they might have gone to the National Justice Museum and seen law courts and how they work via a tour and interactive Q&As, and I actually thought, that sounds fascinating. That sounds, my personality might suit becoming, a solicitor or a judge. And the same thing with any other trip, Sir Mini, which obviously has their plant in Oxford.
Yes, I know it well. I know it very well.
They do tours and trips there, and you learn about high-tech manufacturing techniques and processes. So the experiences of different industries that they will gain. And this is where, obviously, as I mentioned previously, where teachers, when they sit down and plan and think of a different range of trips so that you can cover different types of topics and within the curriculum. That it not only enhances their learning, but also that they get experiences within those actual industry or working environments. Which for some people that they'd go on a trip and then they might end up within that working environment later on, because that student or pupil enjoyed it that much that it changed, as you mentioned, their course of thinking, and they went in that direction from a learning and work point of view.
A few more stories coming through just before we get to the end. We've literally got a few minutes left of the show, so let's quickly fire in a few more of these stories that are coming in. Campfire chaos on a Duke of Edinburgh camping trip. We were toasting a certain brand of sweet treats and accidentally started a fire that spread quickly and was half the size of a football pitch. Probably some exaggeration there. No phone signal because it was a Duke of Edinburgh trip. The group was approximately 15, 16-year-olds who had to jump into the river and then use buckets to dampen down the flames. Took about 30 minutes, but it worked. So well done. That became a success in the end, didn't it? And then the final one, which is a fantastic one to end on, I think, is on a high school trip to a choir festival. So again, it's good to go on trips that allow people's different skills to be explored. Obviously, this is a music trip. One of the boys in the room next door apparently had a sleepwalking problem. He woke up and all we could hear of everyone else woke up to shouts of "Alan, no! Alan, no!" I think we need a bit of a sound effect here. Why were they all shouting "Alan, no"? Ooh. Because he'd sleepwalk into the hall of the hotel and took a huge dump next to the elevator. Oh,
interesting.
And what a lovely way to end it. Craig, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm lucky in the fact that I've never slept walk then.
I don't either. So thank goodness for that. And thank goodness we don't know someone called Alan who does sleepwalk. Thank you so much. UK School Trips, that's ukschooltrips.co.uk. It is a free service where you can look up trips for all of the UK, including residential workshops and more. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Have you had a good time on Teachers Talk Radio?
I certainly have.
Thank you so much, Craig. All the best. And remember, do share Teachers Talk Radio and hopefully continue to inspire schools to do great trips. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David.
Take care. Cheers, Craig.
Cheers.
Big applause for Craig. Thank you so much. That was absolutely fantastic. I hope you enjoyed it. That was a fantastic discussion based around the very important topic of school trips. We all know about school trips, don't we? We all have great memories of it. I'm Dave Cunningham.
Live from London, this is The Drive Home with Dave Cunningham on Teachers Talk Radio.
I hope you have had a great time. Plenty more shows coming up. It is a jam-packed schedule. Do make sure it's the Fantastic Five, we're calling it today. I'm the second show of the day. We have 3 more. Unbelievable. We are live. Do make sure you get in touch and contact all of the shows coming up. A very special one at 10 o'clock.
Live from London, this is The Drive Home with Dave Cunningham on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live on the Podbean app or desktop player. Just head over to www.podbean.com/LSW/TT Radio or search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TT Radio.
Obviously, you should be tuning in to all of our shows. Absolutely. We have a plethora of